Unemployed and Afraid acknowledges the traditional owners of the land we have recorded this episode on and of the land where you, the listener, are tuning in from. We would like to pay our respects to elders past, present, and extend our respect to any First Nations, Aboriginal, and Torres Strait Islander people joining us today, acknowledging that this always was and always will be Aboriginal land. Welcome to Unemployed and Afraid, a podcast that explores the glorious mess of building your own business with the people doing it. I'm your host and fellow business builder, Kim Curtin. Thank you for being here. Let's get into some good, honest, small business chat. Hello, amazing listener. Thank you for choosing us for your ears today. We're here to deliver you the personal stories, real feels, and priceless inspo on the chaotic and amazing journey that is running your own business. Today's guest has so much brilliant energy to share with you, and we really cover a lot of very important topics within this gig, like recognizing when you've stopped learning and need to move on from a business you've loved, redefining your definition of success, and learning to believe in yourself and what it is you have to offer. We talk about things like getting past societal challenges around where you're at and to be able to progress with what makes you happy, learning to say no to clients, even when you're just getting started, and the immense value of your IP. Like I said, so much goodness to share with you. So let's get into the chat. I'm chatting today with Jacqui Toumbas, nutritionist, cook, and founder of Food and Hospitality Consultancy, JT Consultancy. Jacqui has taken her immense passion and experience in all things foodie to support other passionate foodies in their business, from food styling and content creation to recipe and menu development, venue marketing, operations, kitchen management, and more. Jacqui brings a holistic approach to solutions for all those in the food and hospo business by ensuring their business is equipped with the foundational tools for long-term success. And now I know this is an audio medium, and my description of how drool-worthy her own food content is will never do it justice. So if you haven't come across Jacqui's work before, hit pause, go look her up on Instagram, drool a little, and then you can come back and hear our chat. And later on, you can also check out her YouTube conversations in the kitchen to see her whipping up some fab recipes with some equally fab humans. Jacqui, like so many of us, has been through big professional and personal identity shifts over the years, and I can't wait to hear all of your stories, Jacqui. Welcome to Unemployed and Afraid.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
So happy to have you. And before we hit record, I was complimenting your very cool microphone setup, which is a little clip that kind of goes onto the shirt and picks up the voice. So anyone who's doing recordings, get around that little device, give that a Google.
I'm trying to be a little bit more professional now. It's a case of all the gear and no idea, but we're getting there.
I can somewhat relate to that, yes. How would your best friend describe you, Jacqui?
I think passionate, methodical, and blunt. 100% blunt, to the point.
I like that. Methodical is something I find very admirable in people. I wish it was something I had a little bit more of myself, with a little bit more of a just barrel through and see what I can do once I get started. So that's interesting.
I've had to learn to be very methodical. I think it's been from like a young age, but throughout uni was probably the biggest thing. So I was working full-time and studying full-time. So being methodical really, I think, saved me in that situation.
Yes, I can absolutely see that. And I know you have a very interesting story with your studies. So I'm going to ask you a little bit about that shortly, but maybe we'll get into it in this. But before JT Consulting, I'd love to know, who were you?
I was Miss Bliss. That's exactly who I was. So I owned a Brisbane-based Whole Foods cafe, and it was also, we went into catering for a few years as well. Absolutely the core of me, I put everything into, which I loved. I have this thing that everything falls into place, everything. And now looking back, I can see how things happened and why they happened, but sometimes when you're in the thick of it, you don't see it. But I fell into taking over a lease of a venue that was actually close to my family. So it was somewhere my grandfather used to go every single day for 40-something years and have coffee with his friends, because it was an old fruit shop that his friend owned. And when the fruit shop was going to leave, someone had to take over the space. I didn't even think about it. Dove straight in, had just finished a nutrition degree, had not done hospitality before besides working in my family tavern. Other than that, I knew nothing. And it was the start of, I would say, my identity as Miss Bliss, because people actually came in there and thought my last name was Bliss, which it isn't, but we'll roll with that. And for the next 5 years, I just threw myself in the deep end. I went from, hiring staff, doing a fit out, creating menus, learning how to cost a menu when I was first told, oh, you just put a number on there. A lot of Googling, a lot of, asking Google how to do things. But it was probably my biggest learning curve to this date. And I'm so grateful for it, as much as there was a little bit of a joke that if you couldn't find me, I was crying in the cold room. So had a few breakdowns, but it was fine. And I learned so much, and I met so many incredible people along the way too. So I think one thing from that was that there was never a destination I was looking for with Miss Bliss. I think at one point it was more, I wanted to have several venues and I wanted to get to a certain monetary value in that sense. And then it got to the point where, I hate to say it, but I burned myself out. I really got to a place where it wasn't filling my cup anymore as much as I tried to force it to, because it was everything I loved. It was food, it was people, it was community. Community is at the core of what I do and what I love. And I had built this beautiful community. And when I was in the shop, obviously you put on that persona and you're happy, and that was great. But I would come home and it wasn't filling my cup. And I didn't know what was happening. I felt like I'd gotten to a point where I had learned in that particular situation, especially in the niche, because it was at that point, Brisbane didn't have any Whole Foods cafes. It was something that I wanted to create because while I was studying at uni, I would want to go out for breakfast with dad, and you either had your ultra health food cafe, which my dad wouldn't have a bar of it, or your really franchise cafe that everything's bought in pre-cooked and frozen sort of thing. So I wanted to create a venue that if someone was plant-based or if someone was gluten-free, or, I could accommodate them with a delicious meal, not just a piece of frozen gluten-free bread that was come out of a freezer, but also their partner or their friend who they came with that just wanted bacon and eggs on toast. So that was sort of where the concept came from, and being able to create dishes that things were made in-house. We weren't buying in, there was preservative free, and it was everything I loved and everything that I've always loved about food. But yeah, it got to a point where I was like, there's nowhere to move forward in this, and there's nothing for me to do. And we'd gone into catering, and I love that. I loved being able to take that Whole Foods concept into the corporate space and be able to be, even educate. I started doing educational as a nutritionist for corporates on corporate wellness and how to, get more out of your day in the sense of how you feel yourself, which was amazing. I loved it. I'm always here to help people. I love feeding people. I guess it comes from my ethnicity being Greek. I love feeding people. So for me, I was doing everything I loved, but I felt like I wasn't growing and I didn't know where to go, what to do. And it got to a point where I realized I had outgrown Miss Bliss. I had outgrown that person who I was or who I identified with. And it got to, I'm going to say 2020, but I feel like I always get my dates mixed up. It was pre-COVID, which we don't like to talk about, but I put it on the market just as like, let's just see. I think at this point I had a realization that I wasn't Miss Bliss anymore. I was Jacqui, and I needed to create, I need to find something further. So in the back of my head, I was like, awesome. If this does happen and it does sell, I'll start working with other businesses and help them out, but never like a written down plan. I never had, this is exactly what I'm going to do. Or I didn't have lined up clients. So comes lockdowns, and Brisbane, luckily I only shut down for 8 weeks compared to a lot of other places. But during that time, I made a decision to shut down the cafe because we were a destination. We weren't really a takeaway. So for people to, we weren't going to survive. Had a great landlord who was like, if you shut, don't stress, that sort of thing. Had to go through all the formal things with staff and all that, which was heartbreaking because, we were a family. It was like we were family. And I pretty much hung out at home and I cooked a lot of bread and focaccia in 8 weeks. And it was during that time that my grandfather passed away. And so my grandparents live in the same building as me, which is the best thing ever, especially being Greek because there's always food around. But it made me realize that I got to have lunch every day with them. I got to sit down and play cards with my grandfather. And my vision of success slowly changed. And I realized that, yes, it's great to make money. We all love that, but at what cost? And at that point, it was the cost of not spending time with my grandparents or my nephews and nieces and things like that, or not spending time with myself. The littlest thing of going for a walk and clearing my head in the afternoon that I craved to do during lockdowns because it was the only time outside of my house, I realized how much it did for me. And I was like, I don't do this. And I realized all the anxieties I had when the cafe was running, that sort of went in that sense. So for me, I had this one vision of success when I started the cafe, and it slowly merged over an 8-week period to I can still live the way I live and do the things I love and have the passion I have for food and for helping people and building community, but I don't have to be doing it in this way. So we opened back up. I actually forgot the shop was on the market because I guess you're in that mindset of like survival mode, like let's reopen. What are we doing marketing wise? How are we doing this? And I get an email from the agent. He's like, I've got a buyer. And I sort of was just like, who wants to buy a cafe post-COVID? Like, okay. At one point I thought I was being punked. I literally rang my sister and I was like, is this guy serious? So went through the process. Obviously post-COVID, it wasn't the number I originally wanted. And in that sense, I sat down and I thought about what do I want in the sense of selling the cafe? What do I want from that? And I was like, well, I wanted to build a dream kitchen, my renovation at home, which it's like an office for me with what I do. I wanted to be able to put some money aside for one day to go on a holiday because no one ever knew what was happening at that point in the world. And that's it. Like, I don't want to be a greedy person. I would rather just do what I love. So fast forward a few months, I think it was August, September, 2020-ish, I sold the cafe. It was done. It was emotional because of, I guess, my community, my staff and things like that, but it was done. And so I had planned to like cruise through for 3 months. I remember putting a date in my calendar of like, start back at work properly this month. And for those 3 months that I thought I was going to cruise through for, I just kept getting client after client. And it was so odd for me because I didn't realize how many people, I guess, watched the journey of Miss Bliss. And then now that I was just like, yeah, consulting now if anyone needs help. And I just organically, word of mouth, people started contacting me. And I think that's when I had to deal with what I call imposter syndrome. So I went out there to do these things and I was like, oh, but I haven't studied digital marketing. Like, why am I going to help this cafe? Or I'm not a chef. I'm not a trained chef. How can I help these people? So I had to deal with that, which was huge. And understanding that people are coming to me for a reason. Like if they're coming to me and trusting me, then I need to trust myself at some point. So that was a really difficult stage. And I went through a lot. I even remember sending off emails and, at 3 a.m., don't ask me why, purely like riddled with anxiety because now I wasn't just dealing with my own expectations, which I was when I had Miss Bliss. So if I rolled out a new menu or a campaign and it didn't go how I planned, well, that's on me. But now I'm also dealing with clients' expectations. So if I roll out a campaign for a client and it doesn't go as well, if it doesn't go as well according to me, well, then I'm not as happy. But then what does the client think? So that was always the first 6 months. It was something that I really had to deal with. And yeah, then I think it was just more understanding myself. So that's who I was, I guess, in that stage.
I think you touch on some really important aspects there that so many of us can relate to. And, I even said to you before we hit record, the whole tone of this show and our conversation and these kinds of conversations that the listener gets to hear and be a part of is that I'm in the trenches with these people, with you, building your business. And I'm not coming at this from a position of a business expert that has had an incredible this, that, the other business, and here's now how, I'm going to teach you to do it. And it's funny that you bring that experience up for you, because it was quite a journey for me to get to that space as well. People would say, we want to hear, like, why are you doing a little show once a week or something where you just share like your learnings and stuff like that? And I'm like, because I don't feel like I have anything to say. I don't feel like I have the expertise from the vision of the other side of the mountain yet to tell you, how to do something. And we're always waiting for something to happen or for somebody else to give us permission to be and share what we do know. And it's so valuable when you go through the process of experiencing these things, whether you're in it, out the other side of it. It's just, there's so much valuable insight there. And so often we wait for either a degree, a title, a huge experience to feel like we're warranted in offering our services. And so I think what you touch on there is so very normal, and it doesn't make it any less of an intense challenge to get out of your own way and offer people the service and what they want from you. And it takes that experience, doesn't it, to say, hang on, actually, people are asking for my opinion. So if I have imposter syndrome here, I'm going to have to get out of my own way. Like, I'm going to just have to go and do this and let it happen, and let the results and the outcome show you, oh, actually, this is okay. This is going to be okay. And I share all of that to, I guess, get into the listener's mind if that might be something they're experiencing, but also to hear you're out the other side. You're consulting now as a business in this space. So when you were going through that experience of working with people for the first time and starting to offer this new service, this new version of Jacqui, what was the feedback like through that process? And how did you take it on board, and how did you grow from it?
The one thing I think I would have wished I did, if that is to actively ask for feedback with my clients. So I didn't do that then. Now I do. Now I'll ask my clients, how do you think that went? That sort of thing. But I think I was too scared.
100%. Yeah, that makes sense.
I was way too scared, because what if it wasn't right? What if it didn't go well? So what I started to implement was being very transparent, which I've always been quite transparent, but in the sense of sharing everything I was doing. So I had like a working document that I shared with the client. So then the outcome was of these 10 steps I had taken to get to that outcome. So it was sort of like a working document. I was like, this is what I'm doing this week. And I learnt those patterns. I guess being a methodical person, I like to say I fell into consulting. Like, I knew it was something I wanted to do, but it wasn't something, especially not feeling like I had skills, as in a degree skills for it. I had to create those ways. So I had to, even the sense of it, onboarding a client, what did that look like? Or going through the process of the whole campaign or menu development. And it's changed from, I look back at my documents from, my first menus I did with clients, and I'm like, oh, what was I doing there? But it was all a learning stage. And, I'm very transparent from day one now. That's like, okay, this is the process we're going to go through from A to Z. These are the steps I'm going to take. And even in terms of delivery times, and this is how it's going to go. So I purely feel like it comes down to a bit more confidence and a bit more belief in myself. I guess that's how I would put it, because the skills I had then are very similar to the skills I have now, maybe just a little bit more, worked on, and I've learned a lot more, but I don't think I had the confidence out there to be like, hey, I'm Jacqui and this is what I do. I felt like I needed people to come to me and be like, hey, can you help with this? And I was like, oh yeah, I guess I can. That part of me. And I wish I believed in myself, back in 2021, 2020, whenever it was. I wish I believed in myself and I was as confident in myself as I am now.
I totally relate to that experience. I think many people will. Sometimes it just takes that time to get confident with it. But if you don't start, if you don't do something, and I feel like if you don't cringe at the first thing you do, like God forbid the day I go back and listen to my early interviews, burn them. Just don't ever let me listen to them. There's so much value in there from the guests, but I am just a terrible host. So I totally understand that feeling. Jacqui, you talked a little bit about your studies, and because I had the joyous experience of researching you a little bit before, I know that you came to your studies a little bit later in your career, in your life. I'd love to hear the story about how you first got into food in the first place, what it was like entering into your degree, your studies around it.
I actually had this conversation yesterday. It made me think about it a lot. I love this story. So I come from a typical Greek family. So we had so many family businesses. I finished school, went into the family business. Dad was like, my older sister and brother had worked for the family business. So it was just like, that's what you do. So I went into it. No one went to uni. My sister, my brother didn't go to uni. A lot of friends went to uni, but they'll, going to do like a business degree or accounting and none of it really aligned with me. But growing up between years 10, 11 and 12, I worked in the family business. So it was just like, this is what I do. Went and did that. Didn't hate it, but didn't love it either. So it started off as working, we own a backpackers to this day, working there with my brother, and it was fun. Being at the age of 18, working at a backpackers, it was enjoyable. It was fun, but it wasn't anything like I was a receptionist. That's what I was. Yay. I folded a lot of washing too. And then from there, went and we had a supermarket, a news agency. And then I started to realize that what am I going to do for the rest of my life? Like, what do I love? And I do feel being as a female in a very ethnic Greek family, it was more like you would work for the family, then get married and have kids. And I got to 25 and wasn't in a serious relationship. And I was like, well, what do I love? So I remember going to the news agency, and there used to be a book you could buy that had like every single job in it in the news agency and what unis you could do things at. And I remember getting that book and going through and highlighting, sitting on my balcony, anything related to food. Because I was like, I love food in a way that I love the connection it brings to people. I love the culture. I love how it brings people together. And I came to nutrition, and I guess I just started to really understand health and really value health at that age. I feel your early 20s, you probably don't value it as much. You like partying a bit more. I know I did, but anyway, after that. Yeah, so I looked at nutrition. I looked at what do I need to get into it, and I needed to go sit tests because I was a mature age student at that point. But the hardest thing was telling my dad I wanted to go to uni. So I told him I wanted to go to uni, and he was like, no, you don't need to go. And this went on for about 12 to 18 months until we were having lunch at my grandma's. And I remember her hitting him over the head. I was like, let your daughter go, in her very Greek accent, I can't do, go to uni. So dad goes, okay, no worries, but you've got to work full time too. I was like, cool, yep, no worries. And then I started as I got closer to uni, I started looking at what I had to put into this in the sense of my time. I got a little bit stressed. Uni started, I walked out of my first chemistry lecture in tears. Like, I was like, I don't know how I'm going to do this. But in my head, it was a survival mode. It was like, you can make this work. I think a bit of motivation was not only to complete a uni degree and do something I love, but was the fact of I knew my dad was putting a bit of pressure on me. So it was like, well, I want to show him that I can do this. So I worked full time. At that point, I was looking after our family news agency we had, and I studied full time. A lot of late nights in the uni 24-hour like labs where you had, sitting there till 2 a.m. writing assignments. There was one incident where a staff member at the news agency didn't turn up. And so I couldn't leave, but it was a biology prac. And if you miss one prac, you fail that subject. I remember that feeling of being like, this is horrible and I hate it. But I look back now, and I'm really hoping my dad doesn't listen to this, but I'm very grateful for that experience. I'm very grateful because it instilled a really different work ethic in me, and I've come to appreciate that a lot more. So a lot of things throughout that period of my life of uni and even working for the family business, and it did help me I think uni was like a basis of being methodical while you're working full time too. Every second had to be accounted for pretty much, but it was hard. It wasn't easy. And even going in as a mature age student, and I guess you do have that imposter syndrome as well. Like, what am I doing here? I've missed the mark. I thought at 25, I was behind already. And I was like, I'm 35 now. Like, I definitely wasn't behind. And it was just this mentality of, what am I doing? How do I get there? So I had a clear vision of A to Z of get in the door at uni was step one, complete the degree was step two. I think it was 3.5 years because of that one subject I failed. They only had it on a certain semester. So I had to it was supposed to be a 3-year degree, and it ended up being 3.5. But it was a journey. I'm very grateful for it. And I think I learned a lot more from uni, not just the curriculum, but a lot more in terms of organizational, being methodical because of the pressure that I was put under.
That makes a lot of sense. I think that sense of feeling like we're behind I mean, it's something I experience now. So I'm 38 and I've done lots of different things through my life. And even now I'm like, oh God, I'm just starting a business now. And, I think about that sometimes. I think, gosh, what about that incredible artist who sold her first painting at 86, who started painting at 80? And, you just think about all of the success that comes later. Is it Samuel L. Jackson just decided he wanted to be an actor when he was 40? Now, I could get this totally wrong. So anybody who's Googling this and is like, girl, you have absolutely buggered that up. Fine, absolutely DM me, tell me I'm wrong. But I think it's something like Samuel L. Jackson decided to become an actor at 40. And, I mean, look at him now, incredible. There's so much pressure on us. I don't know if it's a female thing. I'd love to hear from any men and their experience in this space, but we're constantly putting that I'm not where I need to be pressure on ourselves, no matter what we're doing. And it's like nobody else cares about where we're at in terms of the context to our age, but it is such a serious battle to overcome when you're somebody who wants to invest in themselves and create something new. So I think it's a very understandable experience you went through.
Yeah, it was great. I think back, I'm glad I can look back now and be like, okay, that's the reason I went through that. Or that's, how that ended up was so beneficial for me, because when I was in the trenches, I didn't think that.
100%. Talk to me a little bit about your consulting now. So you sold Miss Bliss and it sounds like quite a lot of identity layers had to shed. I think like so many of us, we got a little bit of maybe a push forward when COVID happened to shed some of that, given our identities were so stripped from us as it was, life changing so much. You've gone through that experience and you come out the other side, you're starting to consult. And now where you are in the consulting space, how is it going? How are you promoting yourself and finding clients, and where do you want it to grow to?
I love what I do. I feel so happy to be able to say that. I feel so happy to be like, I actually enjoy every day. Like, I don't feel stressed. Obviously there's weeks that I do feel stressed. Now, I'm not going to sugarcoat it and say, oh my God, everything's perfect. There are weeks like that, but I genuinely love the fact I get to be creative. I know that I was creative with Miss Bliss, but I never gave myself the space to be creative. So now I give myself that space. I love that I've connected with incredible people who are now my clients, and I love to call my friends as well, which is beautiful. I've set myself up with a range of retainer clients, which in terms of income is like incredible, because I get to know what's coming in each month, where I'm saving, what I'm doing, all those sorts of things, what needs to be paid. And for people to trust me with their digital marketing or creating a new menu is really lovely. And I think it's those things that I love. At the start, it wasn't as easy. So it was learning boundaries, which was a big thing, and learning to say no, because I was approached by some people that their scope didn't align with mine. And so at the start, though, you're told to like take on every job, you need everything, every experience, this one job may take you here or do this. And yeah, I think I learned the first time I had to say no, I was like, again, anxiety ridden, but I learned that, wow, that works so much better for me. It gave me space. It gave me time to do other things. And now I share a lot of what I do online. And that is just me. If we had all the time in the world, we would sit here talking for 12 hours because I can't stop talking. But I love sharing. And I've learned that through that creativity process, it's all about community. So with Miss Bliss, it was community. With my clients, I get to create community with them. So I get to work with their community. Even their staff is like community to me. But then as a whole, my customers are a community as well. And then I get to share what I do day to day, because I do spend a lot of time in the kitchen cooking and recipe developing or creating for clients. But then I have a range of project clients, I guess, which are a lot of brands that I create recipes for. And that is also an incredible joy to me, because if anyone knows me, my dream day is spending the day in the kitchen cooking and just being creative and sharing. So when I wake up in the morning and I'm like, cool, I've got 10 recipes to do today, or, whatever I need to do, it is joyous for me. So that's what I love. And that's what I do. Like I said, it's not always fun and games. There are days that I'm stuck behind the computer. Monday's one of them because it's an accounts day and I hate those days, but we get through them because that's what we have to do. But yeah, I think being able to pick and choose and having that ability is really nice. But also, I guess to get to that point, I had to be very clear on what I wanted, and very clear on, in the sense of, it all comes down to money, and we need to survive, and, house, food, gym memberships, all those sorts of things. So for me to be okay with that, because that is a part that I would stress about, like anyone would, I created a going spreadsheet that was just like, what's my bottom line? So if 1 month it's that bottom line, everything's still fine. If it's more than that, amazing. We can put a little bit extra away. So for me, learning to budget in that sense, because it wasn't at the start as regular as I do have now with retainers, it was, So that's sort of how I got to where I am today. But I get to work with incredible people, incredible brands. Like, who would have thought that the last project I did was my conversations in the kitchen, and that was with Bloom Australia, who do like kitchen accessories and things. And I was like, is this still life? Is this, and I've learned that because I like to talk, I use that strength in creating an online community, and it's so much fun. I feel it sometimes there's a negative connotation in content creation online and things like that. I even get weird talking about it sometimes, but I'm learning to be okay with it. And for me to say, people are like, oh, what do you do? Or, part of my job is content creation, and it's sharing that, because I can share a recipe today that is something I do in general, but tomorrow it's going to help someone else. And it's also going to help the brand that I've worked with on that. So I'm very mindful in the brands I work with, want to make sure they 100% align with me, but align with my business as well, like with the consulting side of things as well. So even though I classify all my brand stuff as well with consulting, because it's all recipe development, lots of cooking, lots of taste testing in my house.
That sounds like a lot of fun in terms of the taste testing aspect as well. 10 recipes, it feels like it will generate a lot of delicious food. So I'm glad you're living in a place where you've got all that family there that you can share with and have them enjoy your amazing, amazing cooking. You touch on two things there I want to pick up on. The first being the content creation. And I agree with you. I think content creation gets a little bit of a bad rap, and it's something I've had to learn to really embrace. I'm still going on that journey of learning to really embrace it, that we actually, if we're creating something, no matter what the business is, if we're creating something, we have a duty to share that and put it out there, because even just see it, we always worry so much, oh, someone's going to see that and think I'm a dickhead, or, I might get picked on, or someone might troll me, or something awful could happen. I don't look, right, quote unquote, in front of a camera, all these things that we tell ourselves. I don't have the right gear. I don't have the right lighting. I don't have all of these things. There's so many barriers we put in place to ourselves with content creation, but really, it's a fraction of a second that people see us in their feeds for most of the time. But the people that engage with it will enjoy it and will have a lot of fun with it. So we've got a duty to just get out of our own way and just create some stuff, chuck it up there without too much overthinking, and let ourselves be seen by the world, and what they do with it is their business, but let us ourselves be seen. I think it's an important point that you raised that I just wanted to emphasize, is put a nice little underline there to be like, yeah. And sometimes creating content is work, it is work all of the time, but also we have to like razz ourselves a bit. Like, motivation isn't guaranteed when it comes to like, oh, I can't wait to get in front of the camera. Like, no.
I never have those days. I'm like, 2 coffees, like pep talk myself, you've got this, get a little bit delusional is I find my thing if I've got to be like in front of the camera. But yeah, I said to someone today, I was like, I work better when I have someone behind the camera. So I'm actually feel like I'm talking to a friend. So that's what I try and imagine, because anything I'm sharing is something that I would share with my best friend. So how would I tell her about it? So that's how I try and get over that little fear.
That's a great piece of advice. The other thing I wanted to touch on, you talked a little bit about boundary setting when it comes to financials and taking on jobs. I find the consultancy space really challenging in general, and I'm sure there's a lot of consultants that would agree with me on this, if it's a space that you happen to be working in yourself, figuring out what to charge. I mean, I don't know how it went for you, and I'd love to hear it, but looking at what was I getting paid before, for doing the same sort of thing, for something else, or was I paying myself? It was my own business. And let me just Google it and see what the like average going rate is. Like, for God's sake, it's so hard to get any information on money and what to charge. What was your experience?
That's so difficult. Look, coming from a family that's been in business, it was a little bit like, I have my sister who does my account, so my bookkeeper, I would say, which is also horrible because she rings me up like, you haven't reconciled. I literally got 4 emails in a row the other day, be like, hello, how are you? You haven't reconciled. I was like, thanks, sister. But I had a lot of people to talk to, which was great. But I also had to look at, so everyone was always like, oh, you go by your time, how long it takes. And I'm like, okay, cool. Like set yourself an hourly rate. But then I realized what I was outputting, it was different. So I could be working with like a neighborhood cafe, or I'm working with a franchise that's putting those recipes in 15 different franchises. So like, it was sort of what I had to understand was like my IP, which was such a foreign thing to me because I'm like, it's a recipe. You know, this is what I've done. But then I also realized everything that comes along with that. So usually with a client, you create a recipe, they come for a taste testing, make adjustments, then you give them the final recipe. I need to cost that. So I need to also source the products for them. I need to do a little video on how to make it to train staff, or I physically go in there and train staff. I need to do specification sheets. I need to do nutrition outline for each one. Some of them want me to do a dialed photo, either with a photographer. So I have to then, usually my house is a location, but if they didn't have me, they would have had to hire a location to like, there's so much to take in on it, you know? So it was very difficult. And I think it was just the other day, I got a return client for a job that I was like, yep, awesome. No worries. I'll quote you up for it. So I just went back to the old quotes and I was like, what was I doing then? I was like, for that amount of output, you know, and I used to also not know my time. I used to think, oh, yeah, I can do a recipe in a day. No worries. Didn't think I had to go grocery shopping for the ingredients. Then I had to come home. Then I had to like the clean up afterwards, because when you're recipe testing, it's not like you know what you're doing. I gratefully renovated my house, but I put the biggest island bench. So obviously to make even one sandwich, I'll be like, oh, I'm going to use the whole bench. So, you know, there's a lot to take in for it, and even time plus, you know, the output of where it's going. So it was a journey, and I don't think you'll ever have it straight away. The one thing I did learn though, because everyone is going to try and negotiate, that's a thing. I never negotiated my price. I negotiated my services. So if they said, you know, hypothetically, I was like, X amount is what you get for X, Y, Z. And they go, well, we want it cheaper. No worries. I can give you X, Y for that. You know, you wouldn't get the photo shoot included, or you wouldn't get, you know, this is what I can do for that price. Working from home too, I'm not an agency, so I probably am not charging anyway as much as an agency would, because I don't have the outgoings that they would in that sense, and I don't have other staff. I still got to pay myself super, which if my sister's listening to this, I will do that soon. I still have to pay for the electricity or everything that I use in my kitchen. Creating those things in my kitchen is creating wear and tear on, you know, my kitchen and the devices or appliances that I use. So all that had to go into consideration. It's not just like, okay, my hourly rate is this and that, and it's going to take me 3 hours to do it.
I am so grateful that you've shared all that insight. I think it is so incredibly important. And that advice you've just given around don't negotiate your price, negotiate what you're offering for it is really, really good advice, because yeah, so many of us struggle as it is with the personal value set, with saying, no, I am worth this. And, you know, our security is so linked to so many things that we go, okay, but this client is, you know, say you've quoted someone 10 grand to do something for them, and they're saying, great, I want that thing, but I'm only going to give you 8. And you go, well, shit, I really want 8, don't I? Like, I don't want to walk away from this money. Okay, I'll do that. It's such a hard battle to fight.
Everyone that I've done it to has been like, awesome, no worries, let's go ahead with that. And I'm like, okay, like, you know, so I think it is okay to not give everything and anything, because the client might be okay with that. Or they might go, okay, awesome, we'll get someone in-house to do the photos. No worries, not my problem. Also being able to detach from I call it menu items, like, you know, or detach from that as well, in a sense of, if it's a project, so you have an end date, once you're done, you're done. I'm a very emotional person too, you know, but still I will always offer support for my clients as well if they need along the way, but they also know that if it's after the end date, there's a fee included or something like that. So I think, yeah, just being honest with yourself. I'm a giver and I like to fix things. So sometimes I'm like, yeah, I'll just do it. Like, I'll just get it done, you know. So I'm more like that though with my retainer clients, because I also understand that some months will be like super busy with my retainer clients and I'll spend more time than allocated, but then some months I won't. So I'm very understanding in that way, but it's really nice because my clients understand that. So I actually had one a few weeks ago, and this is where I talk about finding people that align with you as well. I had a client the other week and she's like, oh, I have this idea and I want to do this, blah, blah, blah. But if you don't have time this week, if you've allocated all your time for me, I'll get it done. But it was something that would have taken me like, kid you not, 20 minutes. And I was like, no worries, I'll just do it anyway. Don't worry. because I have that relationship, and that time for me, yes, was 20 minutes that I could have been doing something else, but it's creating that relationship with that client, which is an ongoing monthly retainer, which I call like my bread and butter. That's like my safeguard. And then any projects are like icing on top.
Makes a lot of sense. Where, Jacqui, do you hope to see your business grow to now? What's on your metaphorical or perhaps real vision board?
So my vision board's right here. But anyway, I am branching out into different things. So I always, I guess, growing up, don't put all your eggs in one basket. I also know that me as a person can only deal with X amount of clients or retainers, because I have a goal to finish work at 3 p.m. Still hasn't got there yet, but one day when I finish work at 3 p.m. every day, to be able to go play with my nephews and nieces or take my dog for a nice long walk. But that's my goal. So I'm like, I don't want to think about taking on more clients than I can. I still got room to take on more, but I'm also branching out into different businesses, different industries. I wouldn't say they're definitely not a passive income, but things that I physically don't have to be there for it to run. So I spoke a lot about community, and I mention it all the time. If you know me, I talk about community. The one thing I miss about Miss Bliss, even though I have my online community, but is that in-person community. And I really crave it. So I'm actually looking at investing into a franchise, which is a Pilates franchise. And for me, that's creating a community, something I love. I love working with staff as well. So that'll give me that ability. And I genuinely joined this studio a year ago, and it changed my life in the sense of my mindset, my mental health. So I'm like, I want to share that with people. I want to do that. So that's on the cards. A lot more brand work, which, like I said, I love. So a lot more recipes, a lot more sharing the things I genuinely love, because I've realized some of the little things that I know or do out of habit that I don't think are exciting. I have friends be like, oh my God, I didn't know that. How do you do that? Sort of thing. So just sharing a lot more of that, but then having that really clear group of clients that I genuinely enjoy working with. It's so cliche, but saying it doesn't feel like work, you know, clearly it does when you're sitting there doing a photo shoot of food, but it's enjoyable. It's exciting. It gives me creative flair. So for me, I've sort of separated my work into different pillars, I guess, in a sense, that then I can have a little bit of everything that I enjoy. And I think growing up, there was always like, you have one job, like you go to work every day and that's what you do. So for me to say, well, I actually want to have my hands in a few different baskets and this is what I want to do. It's very different. And it's also a big thing on time management. And I'm currently dealing with that. Like, as methodical as I am, I struggle with time management. So I'm trialing time blocking this week. It is not going well. No one
I can relate.
I thought my grocery shop was going to take me 30 minutes. It took me 3 hours. So, but yeah, so that's where I'm at. And I'm enjoying the ebbs and flows of it. I'm enjoying where it's going. But yeah, I'm really excited. And there are days that, you know, I think it was Monday, I woke up and I just did not like the day. I didn't like anything that day. Everything went wrong. But then there are days like today where I'm genuinely like, woohoo, what's happening? Like, what else can I add to my plate? Which is the horrible thing that I do. I try and take on too much, but
I think lots of us do. And you can never really tell when you're doing your own thing as a business, what day that's going to happen for you. When I got started working for myself, I thought, okay, great. You know, I'm going to be really structured. And like Mondays, I won't take any meetings because I'll do this. That does actually really work for me. But, you know, other days, like you time blocking, doing this. But then some days you know, block out all these tasks to do on a Wednesday and you wake up and you're not feeling it. And it's really challenging. And then sometimes you wake up on a Sunday morning and go, I am in the mood to do some admin, you know, or create some content.
Saturdays are my day for some reason.
I get a good energy on the weekend.
I have a feeling it's because during Monday to Friday, I get so many phone calls and it interrupts me. Whereas on a Saturday, no one calls me. Everyone leaves me alone. So I was like, I'm actually playing around with the idea of starting work on like a Tuesday to Saturday. It's still not structured. I'll still go have breakfast with a friend in the morning, but I'm like, yep, I'm going to sit down and I can concentrate better.
Mm-hmm.
we'll see where it takes.
It's the best thing about doing your own thing is you can actually make some rules. And depending on the industry you're in, you can actually make some rules. We don't have to stick to 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, and let that be a pillar of success. It can be, if you're a night owl, it can be 3 p.m. to 11 p.m. If that suits you and what you're doing, fantastic. There's absolutely no rules here. So I love that. I think that is very, very cool. And I have very good energy for your future goals. My final question to you today, Jacqui, is how can the listener and I support you on your journey to help you achieve those goals?
I think it's joining my community. I think for me right now, my cup fills up most with just being able to share what I love. So following me online, joining me along the journey, just having a conversation with me. I love interaction, and I've learned that's a connection. That's what, I love connection. So, if this aligns with you, let's chat, let's talk. I love sharing everything. And I always thought you get to an end point, it's like, oh, I'm done. This is it. This is success. I'm never going to get there. And I know that. It's all about the journey. So I'm all about sharing and listening to other people too. So here for the ride.
I love that. I'm going to make sure that I've got the links to all of your things in the show notes. Jacqui, it's an absolute pleasure to spend this time with you today, to hear about your journey so openly and be a small part of it by hearing your story today. Thank you so much for taking the time to share it with me.
Thank you so much for having me. I hope that I can bring some sort of warmth or comfort to, other people going through a similar thing. And just remember, my biggest thing is there's no rule book. Do things how you should.
Amen. It has got to be unique to you. It is a perfect way to end our chat. Just let's all go and do ourselves, whatever that looks like. Thanks so much, Jacqui. One quick thing. If you're hearing this, you've listened all the way through. Hopefully that means you really like this podcast, because it's pretty generous to give up 40 odd minutes of your time for it. If that is the case, please leave the show a star rating and a review. It helps me reach so many more people who might also listen all the way through and get some benefit and some support out of it. Not to mention, it puts a real spring in my step to read them. Thank you for listening to Unemployed and Afraid, the podcast for small business builders with your host, me, Kim Curtin. If you love it, you can say thanks with a star rating and a review. And of course, join the community on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Find us at Unemployed and Afraid wherever you're hanging out, and I'll see you there.